panel is going to share with us insights on where we are with the indigenization policy, what has worked and what hasn't worked, who has benefited and who has not benefited. We hope that tonight they are going to interrogate the question of policy consistency with regards to the policy, how it has been implemented over the past 4 years that it has been in existence. We also hope that they are going to give us an overview on the new position, the new government's position with regards to the policy. Without much further ado, I'll leave this time to our speakers. They have each 15 minutes to share with us their thoughts on the subject. We'll start on the far right with Ms. Marcellina Chikasha, President of ADP.
Evening, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you can all hear me. I like to say that indigenization has become a four-letter word in Zimbabwe. It's really taken on negative connotations. It's taken on a lot of negative connotations, but it's a very sound policy if it's implemented correctly. So I think what we're dealing with in Zimbabwe, it's not so much indigenization per se, but it's actually the implementation of the policy of indigenization. If you look at the land reform, that in a way is indigenization, because it was taking land from people that were termed non-indigenous, and 12 million hectares were redistributed to the indigenous people of Zimbabwe. So there's no way that you can fault a policy like that which seeks to empower Zimbabweans. I think where we start struggling and we start having problems is when we see the ordinary person not benefiting, when we actually see the destruction of sound manufacturing sector, when we see industry shutting down and it's determined or said to be as a result of indigenization. So I think we need to revisit what the word means exactly and how we can implement such a policy in Zimbabwe. I always say in Zimbabwe we gained independence in 1980, and us as black people, we basically control the three arms of government. So when we say we are taking something away, if you look at the policy, the way it was drafted last year, there were 1,300 odd companies that were said to be non-indigenous. There were multinational corporations, and those were the ones that were targeted to be redistributed to the Zimbabwean citizens. So of the 1,300 companies, we as the indigenous Zimbabweans wanted to take 51% and own 51% of those companies. But if you look at Zimbabwe and you look at the manufacturing sector, you look at the mining sector, you look at tourism, because this is the distribution of those companies, there's enough room for us as indigenous people to actually start up companies, to become new players without necessarily seizing what is already there and what is working. So that's the first issue that I have, where you've got so much room in a country to create new business, to actually come in as a new player. Is it really necessary to go in and take something that's already working? And when you take it and you run it to the ground, we can give UTC as an example, very vibrant company that was in the tourism sector. It was indigenized, run to the ground. Eagles Vale School, private school that was already there. We've got a shortage of private schools in Zimbabwe. Is it necessary to go and take something that already exists and then run it to the ground? We've got Alan Wack and Shepherd. I could actually just reel off names right now of companies that were taken over in the name of indigenization, but it was merely a disguise to cover up people wanting to secure something that they didn't earn. Because I believe if you're truly an entrepreneur and you've got that mindset, you can actually start up a business you know, your own company, something similar to what you wanted to take over. And then just having said that, so, you know, in summary, there's a problem with the way that we're doing things. Then I just want to explain what indigenization means in other countries. If you look at countries like Botswana, if you look at countries like South Africa, if you go to the Middle East, there's no way that a foreigner can just come in and set up a company and own 100% of that company. There's a very clear policy, there's you know, an investment that needs to be made, and there's a partnership that goes hand in hand with that. You need to partner with the local. That partnership is not something that just comes for free. In partnering, whatever percentage is determined by the governments, the various governments, it actually has to be paid for. And I think that's one of the problems that we actually encountered in Zimbabwe with our model, because we said that we were going to just take, you know, what we did with the land, we were also just going to then take 51% of a company and not pay a cent. So in terms of viability and what the impact that has on a company, and an investor who may have borrowed to actually set that company up, I mean, there's issues there. We need to revisit that model. We need to see how we can make it work better. So that's the second issue that I've got with the model that we've got in Zimbabwe. The third issue is more of a social one. You know, we've made indigenization appear to be, you know, people wanting something that they didn't earn. So it's a social issue where we are telling our young generation that just because you are black in color and you are an indigenous citizen of Zimbabwe, you have a right to just appropriate things and take them without earning them. And there's something that is really wrong with that philosophy. We are not doing our younger generation any justice by saying that, you know, the color of your skin can give you certain rights, because that is the very thing that we fought against when we were fighting the war of liberation. You know, we were saying that you cannot be entitled to something because of the color of your skin, or because you're a certain person's child, or, you know, you come from a certain political party. It does not give you entitlement. We need clarity in the way that we are, you know, exercising this indigenization policy in Zimbabwe. So I think there's a lot of dark areas. It's been used as a way for people to steal. It's been used as a way for people to just take things that they didn't earn. And we need to just clarify and have a clear policy. A lot of foreigners, if you speak to them, they are willing to invest in Zimbabwe. They really have a lot of money to bring in, and they want to just do business properly. But where the waters are murky and there's no clarity on policy and execution, and where you have people changing, you know, goalposts 3 weeks later, 2 weeks later, you don't inspire confidence. So I would really say that we've started off on the wrong foot with our indigenization policy. We need to revisit a lot of things. We need to clarify a lot of things, and we need to make sure that every Zimbabwean is a beneficiary, and we don't base it on such flimsy excuses like the color of your skin or the political party that you belong to. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Chikasha, for that very brief and concise presentation. I'll give this time to our next presenter, Mr. Wellington Zindove from Youth Forum.
Thank you very much, Gertrude. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. And thanks to the colleagues at the Media Center for this opportunity to discuss the indigenization and economic empowerment process in the country. I think I will start by categorically stating that I think I'm one of those ardent believers in this process. To say that I think as a country, we are actually on the right path in terms of correcting some of the injustices that are coming as a result of our history as a people. to say I think it is the fact that previously, if you look around before 1980, before I attained independence, there was some injustice in terms of our economic patterns. And obviously that cannot go unchallenged. And I'm also one of the people who believe that I think there was this generation that comprises of the current leadership in ZANU-PF. They surely did their part in terms of fighting for, political liberation. And I think the fight for economic emancipation is squarely something that is within our confines as a generation, and we should not be apologetic to that. I think, as I shall highlight, there's some serious areas like what the President was highlighting in terms of, I think, the issue around the message and the message. I think to say, is the message correct or is the message correct? I think we'll also seek to unpack that. So, having said that, I would also want to say that indigenization is not actually unique to Zimbabwe. It is common across the globe, but it simply varies in the degree of indigenization and the model that is used. Most countries have set aside certain sectors and quotas of the economy for their citizens, and foreign ownership is restricted. I don't think that you can go to the European Union in any one of their countries and seek to establish a free market, sell sadza like what we are seeing the Chinese doing, and so forth. I think that would be very, very unusual in those countries. So you find that if you go to the Philippines, Islands, Mexico, South Korea, Botswana, Japan, and the EU and Canada, they have also set something of this nature. And also if you look close home to South Africa, they've got what is called the Black Economic Empowerment Program. And also, I think recently across Africa, we're talking about, our mining realities. So I think this is one exercise, one process that I think is quite very, very noble, without actually looking at its downside, like what has been mentioned. So, in terms of where are we today, I think if you look at since 2000, after the land reform exercise, to the enactment on 8 March of the Indigenization and Economic Empowerment Program, what we have actually significantly witnessed is that the political economy of the country has actually changed. If you look at the first land reform program, the rising of the informal mining sector, the urban informal sector, and the urban informal housing, this has heavily shifted the social base in favor of ZANU-PF. I think this partly explains why I think the MDC was heavily beaten in 2013. I think for me it was failure to realize this shift in terms of the social base, to say that ZANU-PF, what it has successfully done is to reconfigure the economy. If you go right around town today, I think there is mushrooming of cooperatives, and they are parceling out land to people. And what people want today is they want somewhere they want shelter. And I think they are doing that with the blessings of the ministry. And I think you will be putting people in between a hard rock and hard place if you try to think that should they go in or should they not go and form and be part of these cooperatives. And also if you look at the rising of the informal sector, particularly the mining and also the urban informal sector. I'm sure I was reading the paper recently that Harare City Council, I don't know whether I can say that capitulated to the demands of the informal sector or what, but I think it is a shift in line with the indigenization of the economy that we are seeing, a lot of these informal, trading centers around town. I don't confuse, I'm not saying this is right or what, but I'm simply saying this is what we are actually seeing. So one of the factors that contributed to the waning support base of the MDC was the fact that the political economy had changed dramatically in 2013. The political economy changed largely from a formal economy to the informal sector. So I think what we are also realizing is that in as much as maybe from a young person's perspective we are crying for jobs, realize that I think that is going to take some time before we really think of the kind of the formal jobs that we are used to. Because at the present moment, the informal sector is actually contributing to close to 80% of the total workforce of the country, which means that the formal sector is actually absorbing far less than it could absorb at independence. So I think that calls for a lot of understanding in terms of where exactly we are going. And one of the areas that I also would want to touch on is the national buy-in from citizens and business. Buying into the policies largely along political party lines. in terms of where you're coming from. If you're coming from ZANU-PF, obviously I think the buy-in is quite 100%. And of course, if you're coming from, let's say, civil society and also the opposition political parties in the country, I think we have seen a lot of drive, largely against the policy. And I think this has got some serious consequences in terms of effectively monitoring and evaluating what is actually happening in this process. And so this has divided opinion in the citizenry and the business sector. So what I would propose that we need to build consensus as citizens and make this policy a strategic national objective that should be run and executed transparently to the benefit of primarily the economically less privileged. I think as a country, we rarely reach consensus on what I think are strategic national goals. For example, if you ask people in this room their position around, for example, the land, around this policy that we are discussing today, I think you will get as varied answers as maybe the colors on the rainbow, which I think is quite very, very problematic. As a nation, I think there are certain areas which I would want to term non-negotiables that I think we should basically be agreeing on the basis that we are Zimbabweans. So, for example, the land question, we should be having one unified position. The same applies in terms of the indigenization policy, to the extent that what we should be differing around is the implementation matrix. But what we have realized that there is largely lack of buy-in, particularly from opposite political parties, to the extent that I think ZANU-PF has been left to do as they wish and as they want, because they know that you guys are saying you're not interested in this, so they will just parcel it out as they want. So, and also one of the problems that is affecting this policy is that there is government inconsistency. I think the policy is likely defined around the character of the minister. To say, I think you've heard that Kasukwere is hard and Nema is soft. So the policy interpretation has been based on the characters of these two ministers or another minister who is going to come after them. I think that is a problem. We don't need as a country a policy that is defined around personal characteristic or personality traits of individuals. A policy should be clearly defined, it should be bold and straightforward, quite very certain. So I think this policy lacks that. And as citizens, I would think that we need to make these colleagues in government come clear in terms of what exactly they would want to do for us. So there is no coherence in government in as far as articulating this policy is concerned. I think there are several examples. For example, I think you recall the clashes between Gono and Sevia Kasukwere. I think they were quite very awash in the media in terms of how they were differing around implementation. So apart from the structural and implementation issues, part of the problem stemmed from the opacity of the policy and the reconciliation with other legal statutes. To say that I think the policy is heavily opaque, like what Madam President has highlighted, to say that it is largely viewed by us as citizens to be benefiting a clique of individuals who are actually politically connected, which should not be a case. The case when you're looking at a policy of this, magnitude. And also, one of the issues that there is polarization that is emanating from the fact that when one mentions the word indigenization and economic empowerment, I think it divides the room, it divides the audience. There are those who would want to listen to what you are saying, and there are those obviously who choose to just put sticks into their ears because they would not want to hear whatever you are going to be saying. So there is this mentality, rather what some that I would call the national side, to say that we totally believe that anything that comes from ZANU-PF is hogwash, is bad, and should not be actually, be looked at with the seriousness that it deserves. I think there is everything wrong with that kind of, a national side. I think we should be able to engage in terms of the policies that really affect the way, our national resources are being distributed. We should be, for example, as civil society, be able to mobilize enough, people to demand transparent and accountability around, the implementation of this policy. But what we have seen over time is that I think we have many times been programming around issues to do with democracy, constitutionalism, and all other things, but without necessarily paying the necessary attention that is needed around issues to do with, the economic matters of this country. So I think we really need to address that national psyche to the extent that we should be able to engage the citizens for them to understand what is really involved and what part can they be playing. I think it brings me to the other point to say, yes, we do have 69 community share ownership trusts currently that have been established, of which 16 of them, they have been funded. There are a lot of things that are going on as we are speaking today. But like I've mentioned, these things, they are happening actually not necessarily in secret, but I think there have not been this direct attempt to try and get the information and understand what really is going on. And also this limits then the participation of the people. For example, our chiefs, they are said to be on the board of this community share ownership trust, but really they don't understand the kind of roles that they should be, playing, and also the engagement in terms of determining the priority areas for investment by the citizens. I think there is no clarity in terms of how are you going to be engaging the citizens. Is it simply through the chief who comes in and says whatever they think is in the interest of the people, or maybe it is through some laid down, consultative process? And one of the things that we have also witnessed is the youth fund, which I think we can all agree that it has been run largely on partisan grounds, and this explains the high loan default rate that we are seeing today. But my point still remains that I think we are largely to blame for allowing ZANU-PF to do as it wishes, because we have thought that we cannot and we should not mobilize around these issues because it is primarily their domain. And I am calling today to say I think this is the attitude, this is the trend that we need to reverse today and make them realize that we cannot allow them to do as they please. And maybe before I raise my case, what does the future hold for Zimbabwe? I believe that economic empowerment and indigenization is not an event, but a prolonged process which will cross into future generations. So it is imperative for the government to create a political and regulatory environment that promotes quality foreign direct investment, critical for economic recovery and growth. This should include a review of the equity laws, but this should not stop the government from crafting policies that are people-oriented at the expense of foreigners. I am saying, in as much as we would want to create an investor-friendly environment, I think this should not be construed to mean that we then sideline those processes which are directly meant to empower ordinarily economically marginalized groups, as I think our history dictates. The other element is that in light of the difficulties that the nation is facing in attracting foreign direct investment to support our economic program, there is therefore need, in light of the recent revelations by the RBZ government, that I think remittances by our colleagues in the diaspora last year stood at 412 million against 165 million from FDIs. So I think there is a clear opportunity to say that the government needs to do more in terms of incentivizing investment primarily from our colleagues in the diaspora to come and I think do something, maybe to start with those in those areas which are primarily reserved for locals, building their capital capacity and base, and that they can be able to engage in other capital-intensive projects and programs. And also there is need for a clear investor-specific indigenization and investment regulations. I think in as much as this is a very good process, I think one of the problems that is suffering is that it is kind of a one-size-fits-all. What you are doing in this sector, you cannot necessarily apply it to the banks. So I think we need this to be an investor-specific or rather area-specific kind of a policy, so that I think we are able to gain more out of this. And also, one of the areas that I would want to touch on is, I think this might not sound good, but I think we should start to promote a culture of what I would want to call constructive corruption. It seems that we are very much disempowered to deal with those people who are actually, in charge of public funds and so forth, and to the extent that we really feel powerless. So what I'm trying to urge is that I think what we've seen in some other countries, particularly the Asian countries, when someone has got access to those huge sums of money, whether illegally or legally, but one thing that they've done has been to show some level of patriotism, whereby those resources have been seen to be committed to local economic process. For example, I wouldn't have any problems with Gertrude taking 2 million a month home. That's fine, but it only becomes a problem when that money is actually not accounted for in any one of our, let's say, the banks and so forth, right? You take the money, you bank it outside the country, the offshore account and so forth, and then companies continue to struggle locally. Young people continue to face high unemployment and the like. So what I'm trying to say is that let's promote a culture of building self-confidence in our own economy, whereby those who can have access to this, people to have access to resources through quite a number of ways. So what I'm simply trying to speak to is that let's use this money to promote the growth of our own local economy. And I think the role of Parliament in terms of monitoring what is actually happening around the economic empowerment process is quite very, very important. It's said to note that our Parliament seems to be very big, but at the same time quite very weak in terms of what it can do. There are a lot of people there, but in terms of their output, I think it's something that is a very serious area of concern. But imagining that our Parliament is as strong as we think when we go for elections, I think they were supposed to bring sanity to this area. And also the role of civil society and opposition political parties. I think we have developed over time a very bad tendency of just attacking government policy simply because maybe it's coming from, you know, ZANU-PF or these other guys. I think that should not be the thrust. The thrust should be for us to play an effective wide role in terms of monitoring the implementation of government policies. I think I would want to draw your attention to the current setting in the South African Parliament. I think you'd find that there is a lot of, you know, fighting from the angle of those whom I would say that they are from the left-wing side of, the political doctrine. But they are trying to push each other quite very much to say, why did you do this? Why are you doing this? And this is the kind of thing that we would want. Not to say each time controversial or not controversial policies are passed, people simply oppose them on the basis that they are coming from this side of the political coin. As such, whatever comes from this side is quite very bad. So I think we need to change this kind of culture so that at least we are able to build on some of the good things that might be coming. And of course, like I've mentioned, the government needs to ensure that citizens are able to be involved in the management of the trust. And finally, I think there is a mismatch between the direction that the indigenization process is taking and also the orientation of the financial institutions. There is need for the financial institutions to be involved in this program by lending money to indigenous people so that they can buy shares in companies. I'm sure there are a lot of challenges around there in terms of security and securitization, or particularly in terms of the land and so forth. But I think in the long term and in the long run, for this process to be successful, there is need for the involvement of the banks. And also, lastly but not least, I think in all honesty, as we are looking at the demand for the 51%, this is not something that should happen overnight or over a day. I think it will be good if we are able to reason and spread this demand over quite a very reasonable period of time. To say the 51%, depending on the sector, could be attained maybe over a period of 10 to 50 or 15 years. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Zindove, for that very detailed presentation. I will not attempt to summarize it now. I'll just allow our third speaker. Welcome, Mr. Sikhala from MDC-T. We welcome you tonight. You came in when the presentations had started. We're happy to have you tonight. You may have this time to share your presentation.
Thank you very much, Madam Moderator. Media Center always bring the interaction of citizens of this country to get political opinions from political players and also the citizens of this country. We really have to thank you for opening these forums for people to be able to digest on some of the things that are happening in our country, and also to see how we can move forward as a country. Today's topic is about indigenization and economic empowerment, where we are as a country, and how are we seeing things happening in our country. Is the program taking place, or it's just a fallacy? The first thing that we have to understand is that we are debating an agenda which ZANU-PF itself is no longer interested to talk about. I think I last heard about this issue of indigenization and economic empowerment during the period of elections. It was one of the loudest ZANU-PF agendas on their manifesto during the last election. But since they emphatically had their victory, they are no longer interested to debate about the issue. So the first thing we have to understand about some of these things that have been brought forward to the citizens of Zimbabwe is just the agenda setting in a political game. ZANU-PF just talked about economic empowerment and indigenization when their hearts and souls are not committed to it. They talked about 2.2 million jobs, which they know they are not going to deliver. So specifically, when some of these things are said, especially from ZANU-PF, don't take them serious. Just say no, chibakira chataura. What is in actual fact, we know there are quite a number of issues that have been said by the two previous speakers, which I also want our citizens to be aware of. There is no one, any normal citizen in any country, whether it will be in the United States of America, in Europe, or also in Australia or in Africa, who will reject the citizens of those countries to benefit from their own resources. There is no normal person who can deny that. But the truth of the matter of what we understand about indigenization in our country was the creation of looting clubs by ZANU-PF, which they want to pretend and point to the nation that we are economically empowering our citizens. I would tell anybody who have a knowledge of any individual or one citizen in our country who are benefita the indigenization and economic empowerment. Of all people whom I know, and in the localities that we live in, I've never seen one person akanda kambo wana uchimari kuchibadira chokuti titange business. This thing shows economic empowerment and indigenization in our country as defined by ZANU-PF is where little small individuals organize looting clubs where their relatives, their friends, and those people, and their acquaintances and those around them, they continue around the benefits from the national cake. Even the current factionalism you are hearing is ZANU-PF is just trying to control their territories of looting. I've never seen or witnessed one single citizen in this country who ever benefited from indigenization and economic empowerment. When the national stock was being taken recently, we heard Chikasha was giving all the money that was intended for the citizens of this country. I don't have anyone who is around those one who is very soon. I know one I got benefit from the economic and indigenization. But we are reading in newspapers that Kasukure to give his own brother the man that was intended for the people who want to be empowered. So in general terms, they continue Yeah, the looting continue in our country, magnify, it will magnify it, no tell to an son. When the majority of the citizens don't benefit. When a policy is introduced, we understand in Zimbabwe, we have got several people who are in business. Strive Masiwa, for example, he was a successful business person and he has now gone to the level of being an international icon. We have got several citizens, James Makamba, who entered into business. Did they benefit through the policy? Yes, ZANU-PF indigenization or economic empowerment. That is not the truth. The way how we run our business is the one that has destroyed Zimbabwe to be where it is today. Because it kills the confidence of any investor to come in Zimbabwe where he will know the money is going to be stolen. Zindove tried to give an example of the quarrel between Gideon Gono and the Xavier Gasquere, and he tried to define and try to panel beat it and sanitize it by saying they were fighting only on the basis of implementation. It was not on the basis of implementation. It was on the basis of the foundation of the policy itself. How do we define our policy vis-a-vis the banking sector in our country? Gasquere and his looting team thought that the money in Nana stand big here, Nana Barclays Bank, Nana Standard Chartered Bank. But one of those and if a person gets there and around good people who are running those banks and get into those banks, they will take that money, not knowing that money is deposited as funds. So Gono was telling them, I can give you as much as 1 million banking licenses in this country for you to be able to open your own bank. This is what we call economic empowerment. Do we have the capacity and the expertise for you to run the bank? Open tried with Allied Bank. And we know where it is today. They thought Mariama depositors that were being put into the bank was their money to loot and to take and build their mansion and buy more properties in Ulawa and in Victoria Falls. And it was not the depositors funds have mysteriously disappeared from Allied Bank. Anybody who has this money in Allied Bank today, he will never get it. You know, first not want to marry you. We know that bank that is being run by Kamshida. Another well-celebrated individual by ZANU-PF on the basis of economic empowerment and indigenization. We know Medbank has stolen all the depositors' funds from it. The money is mysteriously disappeared from the accounts of people in Medbank. So specifically, the way how ZANU-PF takes indigenization economic empowerment policy is very sound in terms of they were able to build gas was in the air. Power. What people economic empowerment business. You cannot have a nation of 18 million business people. One of those citizens has to be a worker. So if we all agree, we must all be employers. And we should not be employees. We should not have employees. I've never come across such an economy. There is also a false propaganda which has brainwashed many citizens in our country by ZANU-PF. Bachita, you can never go to Europe and find a foreigner there operating a free market or a such a selling store in America or in Britain. For a fact, if I have been in Britain 2 weeks ago, if you go to Birmingham today, they have taken the Zimbabwe name, Zimbabwe. Where Zimbabweans go there over the weekend to go and buy, eat sadza, unaona kuna mfushwa, unaona kuna chikafu kiasi cha Zimbabwe. But Zambia is lying to us that you cannot go to England and get into other sectors of the economy. The largest maize grower at the heart of Europe in England today is Zimbabwe. And pretty much in a 2-hectare farm, Britain what they call farms, 2-hectare plot side, which you see, kunana borodel brukuku, kunana fully jones, 2 hectares stays there. That's what they call farms in England. A Zimbabwean who is there and owns a 2-hectare farm is one of the largest growers of maize in England. So it's a fallacy and a lie which Zambia is spreading. You cannot own land in a foreign country like Britain. And the people of mediocrity thinking is about quickly getting buy into it. When the actual fact and the truth is totally opposite to what is happening on the ground. Go to Britain today. The majority of the people who are selling Mazoe orange crush, because Britain is now a population of between 300,000 to 350,000 Zimbabweans. It's one of the major lucrative markets for any goods from Zimbabwe, as far as the local products are concerned. Try to export Doni to Britain and see how rich you will be in the coming 6 months. So in terms of economic empowerment, we know the looting club in Chibakira is the one that is benefiting. Very few at the top. If you see Mafana Chinukunaga, that's why there's create a Mandimba. Opening up Thakari clubs at the city center for them to know. Because they have seen their masters and their elders benefiting at the top. But to find a way also to get into the looting spree, national resources. Yeah, of course I would agree. In terms of the land reform program, no Zimbabwean would have opposed it. As the MDC we know, when we were found in this party, our first major policy in terms of number 2, outside the economy was land. I am the one who opened the Eastern Front. Yamanika addressed 252 rallies from 1998 to 1999. During the period when we were on the preliminary to launch the MDC in this country. And our message was that we want to bring you people from the top of the mountains to come and get into the farms. But you would not have expected the MDC to go ahead in tow. Like what means what you don't need to kill or to rape somebody or to torture for you to get a good policy into implementation. So specifically that it was not a program at all. Because in terms of the literal definition of what program means something that is organized and done properly. You cannot say a program, that's Stevens, what was it was a program. It was not a program. It was land grabbing and passing it to friends and relatives around me, and my supporters were not citizens of this country. I went to farm, I applied to some paper, I was denied it because I'm MDC. I know many people, if Lima said applied for it, Marcellina in Central, when the late Masawi was the governor of Marcellina in Central Province, the only thing that she obtained was a ridicule on ZBC. And there is no reason at all, despite the injustices we are talking about, 20 years down the line, for us to engage in punitive politics. So we are trying to define ourselves on the size or the likeness of our skin. But I'm not mad which was supposed is better than me. This man is of little civilization to me. They are citizens of this country. They also deserve equal share of the national resources. These people were born 4th, 5th, 10th generation. It's like somebody who says Mandela has Zimbabwe because they come just 10 years before the arrival of Mrs. John Rhodes in this country. That is dangerous. And we cannot allow it in our country. To separate ourselves on the basis of color or on the basis of tribe. So they simply went into that ministry, kept quiet, said nothing. And you never say anything. Because you know what this thing is a fallacy. We have seen many people who have been used by some people. But economic empowerment. Takataka uprogana savanu. Dangana edoro panyamgaba hotel kusurasu. Adi nyakera. Rakatsi ti utsoko. Nyakera. Bado abana abaya kita economic empowerment. Indigenization. A person who is empowered to indigenize himself in this land. Akuya kuzokutsika futhi. That's what we know. The major beneficiaries of the looting club, economic empowerment and indigenization, is the elite in Zambia. How can a country of all people own state farms in the country? Even the first lady recently said it publicly to the nation, could just confronted me. Why are you a this? You are stealing our land. Are you the only citizen in this country? Do you think that other citizens will not sit down as who also need way to put their heads on? But their empire of stealing and looting is expanding day in, day out, and every day. So these are things that we have to change. Even in Zambia, we say, don't be like to 100% of Zambia people support indigenization. They know how many who are looting more than others. Confronted me and asked me why are you stealing all the land in the Mazoi Valley? She didn't know we were supporting Chas because Chas was telling her the truth, the plain truth. Why are you stealing the land? And you want to teach that? Because I wanted to build the Robert Mugabe University. But what were thrown into the streets? Thousands and thousands of homeless families were thrown into the streets. Because the whole Mazoi Valley belongs to Grace and the husband. And we must say, Jaita. So this is specifically where we are. Kutimunika muno indigenization economic empowerment. They brought a topic which Zambia has kept silent about. Tell me one day, France economic empowerment. I was visiting in Volkswagen. He was telling me folktales. God knows, I said, that's not enough. Waiting for the next election to find another lie, they will throw to the people and the people to buy it. Like what I earlier said, no one will do. A normal person will resist the citizens of the country must benefit from the resources, the nation. Economic empowerment and indigenization. This is a looting spree. A national resources that has gone into the hands of the few. I've never come across any ordinary citizen who has benefited from this policy. So this is the fact. Everything was done, people were cheated and were lied to. But as soon as after elections, all the banks collapsed. Which you all know. So specifically, Zimbabweans must know we must be able to put in perspective the economy of our country can only grow when we are able to build confidence in it. The odds of putting which they should take 51% of the economy. No one can bring his $100 and $100 back of the new salary $49. Akuna. $1 was only no sweat, no what. Like what they were doing in Mafamsu. Tarakita Jose, nemwombe dzanga dzirimo nembera vakasvika kunotore nekena dzanga dziri papresidende neshuro dzikaziviwa dzikapera zvosuro papresidende. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much to our three presenters for those very interesting and detailed presentations. All our three presenters, as you heard, are in agreement that the concept of indigenization is good, but its definition and application within the context of Zimbabwe is somewhat misplaced, ill-informed, and partisan. Ms. Chikasha raised the question that is it necessary to grab or loot where there is more than enough room for us to create new business? She also argued that entrepreneurship is creation and not grabbing. And she described the indigenization policy as a euphemism for asset stripping, as racketing through legislation. Mr. Zindove's presentation was also spot on. He said that we are on the right path with the indigenization policy. And he said that the indigenization policy is not unique to Zimbabwe. South Africa has it. It's all over in Europe and other developed countries. But what he noted in his presentation was that there is need for consensus. Need to arrive at a consensus and on the strategic national objective with regards to the Zimbabwe policy. He also said through the Zimbabwe policy, the economy, the political economy has changed and the social base has shifted in favor of ZANU-PF. He also noted that the challenge with the indigenization policy is that the policy interpretation is based or defined by personal traits of individuals instead of principle. And he said that there was a major hurdle with the indigenization policy. Mr. Sikhala also argued that the indigenization policy is a mere creation of looting clubs. And he also argued that those who have made it, like Strive Masiwa, the successful business entrepreneurs that we have in Zimbabwe, are not beneficiaries of this indigenization policy. He also argued that there is no need to kill, torture, or rape for execution of a policy, and this is just but an elitist program. With those few emerging issues, I would like to open up this floor for discussion. If you have questions, comments, reactions to this presentation, please feel free to raise your hand and make your contribution. We have a hand.
Thank you. I want to ask Sikhala job. We understand that the indigenization empowerment policy was enacted during the GNU period, and you described, about all these lootings, but the problem is, the MDC was also in partnership in the government of this national unit with ZANU-PF. But atina kuchatakambonzwa from the MDC concerning the looting, concerning the way the police was and is being implemented. That is one question. Then the second question is directed to Mr. Zindove. Who defined the 51%, the 49%, and the community share ownership trust? And why the 51% and also the community share ownership? And also, who are the beneficiaries? Because in a democratic society, we demand to know who benefited, what from which company. All those things should be put on the public, to the public domain. And also in terms of the land reform, because there is a lot of speculation, as was being said by Mrs. Sikhala, that so and so owns such and such amount of land. But as the citizens of this country, we want to know what needs to be published so that everyone should know. Then my last question is directed to Madam President Chikasha. There was a recent problem in our home area, going to Mashingo. The Tupacos flooding. That issue, yakaita almost 10 months, or is still pending. And we were told that allocate 1 hectares. That is true. I've been there, and I also asked, the victims, kuti konei musina kubvisiwa muno kwamakaisiwa kurange kuti mupuwe somewhere, even chero kumashonali east, kumash west, or kumash central. Was the issue there was the issue of the land, and also the issue yet distance from their original place, that is the around the token cost. Then vice ukoko abana pekurima ndo anachwa kawanda. Saka we are not sure the policy yacho yakamira say restrict ere movement according to the province ere to the district ere, or is just an open policy whereby in Mashingo I can own something here in Mashingo Central, or in Mashingo West, or in Mashingo East. Thank you very much, Madam.
Take another round of questions. Anyone else with a question? Before our presenters respond. Yes.
Well, thank you so much. Got one question here related to Mr. Zindove here. I understand that before, it looks like we are very good in coming up with the policies, government policies. But understand we are not implementing them. So with the before Zimprest, with before ESAP, this is Zim asset. So what have we so far achieved? It looks we are very good in implementing those drafting those policies on paper. But when it comes to implementation, what have we achieved from ESAP? What have we achieved from Zimprest? And what are we going to achieve from Zim asset? Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'll give this time to our speakers to respond to the questions addressed to them, but you're also free to answer any of the questions that you feel you have some input. Mr. Zindove, 2 questions were addressed to you. The first one was on, you remember?
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. I think I will attempt from the last one. I agree with you, colleague, that our government since 1980 has been very good in terms of crafting policy blueprints. I think to the best of my knowledge, we have not had less than 40 economic policy blueprints, some of which you have just mentioned, even to the latest one being Zimas. But I think what we also note as activists and also citizens is that there is generally lack of implementation of these policies by government, which is where I think I was anchoring my argument on, to say that there are certain programs and processes which are of a national character, which I think we should be rallying behind as citizens. And how would we do that? We need to build our power pyramids, either through civil society or maybe riding on the trust that maybe citizens might have put on opposition political parties. I understand there was one colleague who raised that this act was passed actually on 8 March 2008, during which time I think the next day we have MDC in Parliament. They had a very big representation there, to the extent that they would have changed some of these things. But alas, nothing was said. I think they used that time to ensure that the Prime Minister got a farm which had more than 200 head of cattle. So you find that we are in a catch-22 situation, whereupon whenever we build our power pyramids at a certain level, we are betrayed. So there is no way that I can think of that we can be able to push this government
to implement these processes, these policies outside building the people power through the social movements, through these political parties. That is what I was telling you, say this should be the role of civil society and political parties to do their effective watch to grow, to ensure that there is implementation of these policies. But there is what I would term abstinence. They say, these policies, they don't want to deal with them because they are Zanu-PF policies, which is against what I would term the national interest. So that could be my answer there. That we need to mobilize, build, and ensure that they implement. If you look at Zimbabwe today, it's a very good policy blueprint. I think even the Mauritius accepted that. But I think there is very little that we are going to be expecting out of it, because there is poor implementation, there is poor mobilization by the citizens to ensure that this government is able to act on the policies that it has set before itself. And why the 51%? I think this is a promulgation at law to say indigenous Zimbabweans are supposed to be owning 51%. I'm not sure how they arrived at it, but I think that is what we are working with, because it is actually stated. And also the matrix around the community share ownership trust works to say that it will be subtracting from the 50%, 51%. To say, for example, it's actually put at 20%. If you're able to maybe contribute to the community to the effect of 28%, I think you can actually be, you already be contributing to your 51%. There are companies already which have actually, which are actually compliant. For example, Mikos, at two folds, there is the employee share ownership scheme, and also through the revolving youth fund, which is actually managed by IDBZ. And there is also SWEPS through the employee share ownership trust scheme. And there is Zimplans through the community share ownership trust and the employee share ownership scheme. And I think, to the best of my knowledge, I know there is a Shawani Community Share Ownership Trust, which is actually functioning. I think the composition, it involves the chiefs, the district administrators, and some other people. And of course, there have been some adverts in the press lately where they've been calling particularly young people to come and be part of this, to sit on this board. But what we have seen is that we will simply not participate, that we wait, to complain. So I think that becomes a problem. We need to shift our mindset to say, well, how can we be part of these things, so that we can also start to complain from within. Let's not be like our colleagues who, when they are out of government, they make a lot of noise. But when they were inside, these things, we're talking about them today because someone somewhere did not do their duty when it mattered most. So I think that is where our problem actually basically lies. It's bad today because they are out, but when they will benefit, I think I've got a list of people from within the MDC who have got funds and where they are located. And if he's sure that he's ignorant about who else has benefited from the indigenization process, I'm at liberty to share with him that how much his colleagues have actually been able to benefit from this process. So we should not allow politicians to come before us and lie to us that we don't know about this. They are just benefiting. They are part of these looting clubs that I'm calling to you today as citizens to say, let's mobilize against. Because they only talk about these things when you ask them. But when they are in parliament, then they talk about youth unemployment, then they talk about these things, they are silent. It's quite very unfortunate and regrettable.
Thank you very much, Matthias.
Okay, I've been asked a question, but first of all, I'd just like to respond to Mr. Zindove. He speaks about a spirit of, backing a national agenda as a citizen of Zimbabwe and not focusing on which political party is bringing that agenda in. But, the very people that destroyed that spirit of nationhood are actually ZANU-PF, because they bring forward a policy and they don't commit to it. They bring forward a policy, they don't commit to it. They bring forward an economic blueprint and they don't commit to it. So you cannot really shift the blame from ZANU-PF onto the citizens of Zimbabwe, because there's just no commitment by the ruling party to what they say they'll deliver. And I actually agree with Mr. Sikhala that yes, we heard a lot about indigenization during the elections, but after the elections, ZANU-PF has been very quiet. So what is it exactly that you expect the citizens to commit to? You're speaking of the community ownership trusts. I know, for example, that Zimplats was completely messed up. It's actually translated into a loan. There's nothing that people have benefited per se, and government has now been, subjected to a loan or to money that they owe to Zimplats, because in life there really is nothing for free. So you can't actually go around saying that, we've just given you shares, when in actual fact, in the agreement, if you analyze that agreement that Kasukwe went into with Zimplats, the burden ends up being in the hands of the government of Zimbabwe to pay that money to Zimplats, because there's nothing that they gave the people of Zimbabwe for free. And then we looking at Zim Assets, because you also spoke about Zim Assets, and you said it's a very good policy, and I really get annoyed when I see this in the newspapers, people saying Zim Asset is a brilliant economic blueprint, because it's not. I've read it, I've looked at it, and I've actually analyzed it, and it's actually not a good economic blueprint at all. First of all, they want to raise $7 billion from indigenization and taking 51% of the multinational companies that are there, and then offloading that 51% shareholding and maybe translating it into some form of liquid cash, which they can then use. That is how they want to fund Zim Assets. Now, how do you fund an economic blueprint from money or from shares that you don't even have or that you don't even own, where there's no agreement in the first place, and you're telling people that Zim Assets is a good blueprint? Where's the money going to come from? That's the first issue that I've got with Zim Assets. Number two, you want to leverage off land. That's what Zim Assets said. Go and read it. It says that money is going to be raised by leveraging off the land that the people of Zimbabwe own. Basically, citizens of Zimbabwe, they want to go and get loans and give our land, the very land that we've been told, no, we must, toy and creating job so that we can get back our land. That very same land is going to be used as collateral to get money from foreigners. So where is the commitment? Where is the honesty in all these dealings? I think we are just being hoodwinked. That's the bottom line. We're just being given something that looks very fancy. It's got a very long name. It's fancy. It's printed on colorful paper, and we're supposed to be impressed. But if we really look at it analytically with, economic mindsets, and we say, okay, where is the money going to come from to fund this project? You'll see that it's just a fantasy. There's nothing. There's no money to fund Zim Asset. That is why our president is in China today. He's looking for money. But Zim Asset doesn't say he's going to go to China to get the money. Zim Asset says the money is going to come from indigenization. So why has the money not come from indigenization? Why have we not seen that $7 billion that Zim Asset promised us was going to come from indigenization? So for me, indigenization has not worked. It's just selling people smoke and hot air, but there's nothing to Zim Asset, and there's nothing to the indigenization policy as it's been written by ZANU-PF. Thank you very much.
Thank you. But may you also please respond to your question that was asked to you?
Okay, sure. Okay, sorry, I think you asked the question, and you were talking about the allocation of land at Tokwe Mkosi. And I think the gist of your question, you were trying to understand, does it really matter where you get land allocated in Zimbabwe? Does it have to be in the area that you come from? And we have to go back yet again to the culture that ZANU-PF has created, where everything is partisan and everything is, there's patronage. You have to work for the party, or you have to do something for the party in order for you to benefit, or you have to come from a certain area for you to benefit. I like my brother's mindset on this one, where he says it's enough just to be Zimbabwean. We should be able to get, if we come across such a misfortune as the Tokwe Mkosi disaster, people should be able to get land anyway. It shouldn't be a big deal now where you hear that people are being terrorized by riot police and being put into camps and etc., etc. I think we've lost the definition of what is just a Zimbabwean citizen and what do they deserve. So really that allocation of those 1 hectares it should not be determined by where the people come from. Thank you.
No, I think I will just say one question, that during the period of the GNU, that's when the Economic Empowerment and Indigenization Act was passed. I think that is not correct.
See, it was passed on 8 March.
On 8 March what?
Yeah. 8 March 8. Then the transformation was...
it was passed in 2008 and the GNU was put in March 2009. So specifically, the MDC was not part and parcel of this ZANU-PF shenanigans. It was passed by ZANU-PF during the period of the Ditande, when they were trying to negotiate with the MDC to bring them into the inclusive government. They were not part and parcel of this diabolic decision, and we understand it and we know it. I was one of the major critics of the government of national unity. Then we all know it. The record is very clear. But sometimes we should not simply try to throw dirt where it is not. The MDC and when Changre was the Prime Minister, he fought left, right and center in trying to enlighten ZANU-PF that their behavior is unbecoming in as far as attracting a direct foreign investment is concerned. This is going to affect our economy. There was a lot of noise from the MDC corner, and also Tendai, as the Minister of Finance repeatedly said it, that the way how we are trying to run the economy as if we are managing a duck shop, we must be careful with the way how we are doing it. So specifically, the MDC made a lot of noise vis-a-vis against this policy of indigenization. That was the period when Kaskwere was pretending to be very combative as far as implementing the policy concerned. And the MDC spoke quite well that the way how we are approaching these things is going to destroy our nation. As far as we see the country going. There was one issue that was erroneously raised by Zindove as well, which I did not initially respond to, when he was saying that the mushrooming of housing cooperatives within the peri-urban sector of this country is really brought ZANU-PF back into action, and also it's one thing that is bringing ZANU-PF back into political limelight. But the truth of the matter is that I understand, especially myself, who stays in Chitungwiza, where a lot of these housing cooperatives are. ZANU-PF has even promised us that they are coming to destroy 44,000 of those houses. So specifically, how can you say it is to the benefit of ZANU-PF when they are coming to destroy the houses of their own people? We have got even people who are very senior government officials who came and built their own houses there because they were not allocated land for them to have their houses. This is a government that is being overtaken by events because it is not a good planner. A good planner will not see Ziko today. If you go to Ziko today, it is now a town. It has a location. Do you know that? Murusepa, Mamande town, no location, Marsiko, Mande Markets, Balaku, Vapite, Chinamatete, Okuflash. And the government is saying they want to come and destroy that urban setup that has happened at Ziko. Because you know it wasn't from government. The government it were overtaken by events because it is a bad planner. If you move Sheke up now to Dema, location, you don't know how we are going to name it. These are people who do not have anywhere to live. They allocate themselves late, and the government is being overtaken by events because they are bad planners. They will be busy concentrating on looting and trying to kuchingana when the country should move forward. The government should have a sustainable development policies where they will know that after this long, how many people are we going to have in Haran? How are we going to give them housing states? Because no kind of pattern order, the farm has been taken by Mhlanga, which should be used for urban development. If you go with the just after Maida, the farms have been taken by Mukuti, the former deputy minister of health. When in actual fact, it must be one area which must be allocated to the municipality for it to be able to expand its own housing backlog. So specifically, ZANU-PF are bad planners. They only concentrate on looting when the majority of the people want to move forward with their lives.
policy development with MDC is throwing dead in his face.
And the other issue which I did not reply, Madam Moderator, are only, you know, bold lies that are being thrown around by Mr. Zindove. That showing the MDC is owning a farm. Changrai, we know he owns a farm. You know, an honest person should tell us Changrai owns a farm in Bigita, farm number so, which has so many hectares and so forth. So that we know is the truth. Because the truth of the matter is that I know Changrai does not have a farm. I know nobody in the MDC has a farm except Welshman Mube and who else? I think it's only Welshman Mube, whom I know from the MDC family who owns a farm, and no one else. So it's basically a lie, which is telling people here that the people in MDC owns farm. I applied for land myself. I was denied and my application was turned down by Ugari Gumbo when he was the Minister of Lands and Resettlement.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Job Sikhala. I'll give Mr. Zindove time to respond to that. But first, let's go for another round of questions. Yes.
I don't know whether that is a question or a statement. But there's some few things that I have noted, which I feel as Zimbabweans, as citizens of this country, we need to bury, you know, the political differences that we have in this country. For example, you see, we have a big problem, corruption. In me, I come from ZANU-PF, both ZANU-PF and the MDC. That's one too. But then what I was looking at, especially this issue the so-called Zimbabwe, it's quite a noble idea. But the unfortunate part of it, Zimbabwe, very few of us would stand and say, tinototi kana tatowana opportunity yekuti titorewo like zvataurwa naMr. Zindove kuti Mr. Sikhala vari kutaura today because it's outside. I don't know whether kuti zvakafamba sei kuti vazova outside. That is not a debate, our debate. But ishiripo ndekuti ngatitaurei the truth as it is kuti munyika munonga tese. And I was even saying to some people on that level, kuti kubva pane mwana ane 10 years kusvika kwatiri kudarika kwese tanguva corrupt almost everyone. I just want to give you an example yandakaudzwa nezuro. Baba vakange vasungwa vakaita crime, vaitaka crime ngavo ndobva vazosangana nemapurisa zvikanzi baba masungwa akaringa mwana kavo kane 4 years. Now kamwana kakabva kati kuna baba tambo yacho iri kupiya kusunga iyi zvikanzi aiwa zvandasungwa izvi ndasungwa handisina freedom yekuita zvandinofanira kunge ndichiita ndisina kusungwa. Ndobva karapa kakati zii, ndobva kaisa ruoko mumwe ndokuburitsa dhola zvikanzi dedi ini ndine dhola randapiwa namama ndizopinga maswiti. Saka tinogona kupa mupurisa here kuti musaenda kujeri. So why am I saying this? I'm saying to say that the level of corruption in this country, tasvika panguva yekuti hapana chinhu chichaitwa pasina kafufuro. Saka ndaifungidzira kuti maybe mafora akaita seiwawaka ndiwo atinototanga kutotsvaga maways and means ekuti tozvigadzirisa sei, because tikangoita madebate asingayildi maresults hakuna kwatiri kuenda. Because tinongoramba tichingoenda into second, Job Sikhala azodai, Mhlanga azodai, Chipa azodai, hazvina zvazvinobatsira. Isi taifunga kuti ngatitsvagei the way forward. Isu zvatakaita izvi zvinoti kabuda muno tichitaura kuti toda kuti nyika yedu ifambe so. Tinoda kuti zvinhu zvedu zviitwe nenzira iyi, sekuronga kwazviri kuitwa nemapolicy makers edu. Tikavasapota, I think we'll be going somewhere. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that comment. Let's have another person. We have one here, and here, and then.
Mine is not a question. Was what happened MDC was one noise. Vari mutengo wati mukutira kana kuchika porikira inonzimbida kana anokachitswa saka hatina zvatakambonzwa but for now ndopatazonzwa vakutanga maprotest vapinda mustreet mayutsana mabasa but isusu we believe that youth kuti nyaya yemabasa isi nyaya yemademdc nyaya yemayouth ese no matter kuti ZANU-PF kana kuti anyone vanhu vari kuzvionera mayouth kuti hakuna mabasa zveshuwa. So now we know, we understand what is happening. MDC is looking for leverage. That's political leverage. You go to one who write on some side, maybe we don't know their bankers. We talk about financial help into whatever. But what we know, everyone knows that Namabasa and CMTC are not supporting a point that you unsupported goods. And you are worried this is used. CMTC. Chakamboisa hope, but now we have lost every ounce of hope, and I think it's the rightful time of a new political development. It is serious. It's needing MDC. So it's the youth you are concerned, and you are going to move on to change the song. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I can tell you, Sean, I'm the report member of Zimbabwe Youth Council, Marcellina East Province, as I'm sitting here. Kashami Sikhala used to be an MP, isn't it? You are saying MDC, we as MDC at Nava Chatakawana. I have to stop everything to Musana Makamdiari. Like, let me finish. Let me finish. You know, you guys are politicians, but you are taking Zimbabweans for a ride. I'm telling you right now, I can give you statistics province by province, especially Cape Fund. You ask for Manicaland, there is little money left for Manicaland province. March East is also number second 10 province, you understand? As you speak, you can go to head office and ask statistics. Then I could give you a printout. You go to who and most of my youth machines they were not so honest. Like for example, in Indian Bureau, and they won't come out with that 5,000. You understand? They just apply one for and but he's saying at MDC benefit. Who are stopping them? Danani kids I never or MDC. You just apply. You just need to have a project proposal. It is bankable, and a project it is viable. Understand? So if you are not benefiting, it's not our problem, or it's not good police but it's because you are lying to your own youth, but no, don't go there because changes and people. You understand? So if you are not land, because my top files are no land what it characters to write me is they should redistribute. Officially right now it's too late. It's not problem and it's not problem yes no. That was your own problem. So one watch it on a list and some of them maybe were benefit or they were using whatever. No. But everything was just open. Like ask me Zimbabwe Youth Council, I can tell you, programs for all youth. Can I remember Zimbabwe Youth Council, right? Unless my teachers, we don't know. We just hope as long as we're Zimbabweans. So let us be proud of ourselves as Zimbabweans and move forward as Zimbabweans, not as MDC. or Zindove? Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Let us be brief and concise because of our time. We'll take one and the last hand at the back.
Thank you very much. My first question goes to Mr. Sikhala. He said none of the MDC members got the farm. But I'm very confident, I don't know the plot number. Triangular has got a farm in Kwekwe and he was given 100 heads of cattle by Gideon Bond. It's very, very well known that he was given that farm. Then the second question, it goes to Mr. Zindove. Mr. Zindove said he compared the employment rate between 1980 to 85, 90, somewhere there, to the rate of employment as of now. He said during the period, the industry will accommodate the unemployed youth into the industry. But now he said, as of now, the industry is failing to accommodate because the rate of growth of population is far higher than the rate of our industries. But I believe the industries are no more than. So we cannot compare the two at all. Then, my last question is going again to Mr. Sikhala. Mr. Sikhala, you told us that the youth of MDC wouldn't get benefit from the land reform program. But if you want to be honest with us, yourselves as the head of MDC, you were telling people not to go into the farms because of the fact that you were going to redo the redistribution, is what this brother of mine has just said. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The last hand at the back. Let's be very brief.
I'm going to be very brief. Mine is not a question. I just want to comment because some people were saying Sikhala vana kumutano kuti vanga vasimo ndoda kutaura ndichiti Sikhala varimo muparliament vari MP ndovega MP vepadrought relief muSt Mary's vachiviga nesvodzwa chaidzo dzaisvodzwa ende varimo muparliament vari kuSt Mary's havana kumboita time iyoyo tinoziva kuti vaita mari yakawanda vachirana namaNGO akawanda havana kumbobva muSt Mary's kuti mahunyadzo muno mune suwa ndakuenda kuna vamwe kuULEZ. Saka Sikhala nemanguvasiya is a man of the people. He wants to die with his people. He wants to fight for the people. Ndoda kupa comment zvekune vataura veYouth Council kuti zveshuwa mashoko ava vataura kana indigenization yakapa vanhu mari, economy inotaura yega, nyama inonaka inotaura yega kuti pakaiswa mari vanhu vari kuita mabusiness, employment iri kucreatiwa. But the result that we have, there's nothing that was done. There's nothing that was done. Two, Katitora land, it was no statistics, dzinotudza kuti nyika yedu inoproduce gorosi risikakwanisi kusvika 10,000 tons. Not enough for 1 week for a country. Takaita red reform 15 years ago. It's not acceptable. We must be ashamed. We must stop talking about that and try to find some solution to those things.
Okay, thank you very much. Your last words as we conclude this session tonight.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Just quickly, thank you, my brother, for making my point. Changira has got a farm at Akapua. And it's no problem with Zimbabweans. And a farm, it's now a problem. Todi kushitende ane farm home game. Ngationa sekutora kwaskala kuti vakanyimirwe farm handiti. Has it been along political party lines? Ndozve tisingadi izvozvo handitika. Toudzai imi vari kubva kuZimbabwe Council nevamwe vari kusvika plus zvino muparliament kuti aiwa Sikhala akanyimwe farm on the base ndewe-MDC. Azosvika panotoramba ezivi kuita farm chinhu chakashata zvinhu zviri wrong izvozvo handitika. Zvonditadzisai ini kutoriwanawo ndichirida. Inini mudhara wangu losing candidate kukansila ward 20 kuMDC kuchiredzi ane farm. But right now we are kumira panachira kuti aiwa haana kana farm. Anozitora vanazitongatasa mari dzavo dzenyu akachiwanezano ane farm huko anova kuchiredzi. Saka handiti zvinhu zvakadaro zvodzosera maZimbabweans sure zvinhu zvakada saizvozvo. Farm torida ndeyedu nyika ndeyedu haistretch full stop. And then kwozoya nyaya yeYouth Fund. musanyepera zvevanhu. Tine muchinga yainza secretary general yainzi Bwananzira turi kutonga yematutu. Tine list revanhu vaipiwa mari Kaswera waipa vake matutu achipa vanhu vake. That no one can deny those things. Kusvika tazocomplaina ichibva kuma-CEOs kuti mari ikuwaipa along maparty lines. Wabva ku-MDC, wabva kuZanobel, ndo mawanikirwo aitwa mari. Munhuwo zvake nje anga asingambowani mari kana youth fund. Ati munozviona manje. Saka ngatisanyepirana. And then nyaya yamataura yeemployment. Ndanichingoti kubva 1980 find kuti as compared to now vanhu vavamufoma sector izvozvi vanyanya kuderera. Saka panataura nyaya yereconfiguration yepolitical economy ndeyekuti hatichangotarisiri kuti industry sekumira kwayaita ndichatozomuka ndakasunga taiti ndinotsvaka basa. Mabasa akuwanikwa kubva for example kumunda. Takutarisa kuti kana hurumende kana policy yakanaka nditova fully employed ndichiita mari dzangu ndiri ikoko kusanganisira nemamwe masectors ari kunzi ave indigenized. Saka this is my understanding yekuti reconfiguration iyi zvinhu hazvichadzoki to the employment levels nemena yatatinayo kudhara.
Thank you very much. Inini, I wasn't asked any questions, but I just want to summarize what we discussed today. And for my brother over there who says he's lost hope in the MDC, there are new parties that are coming up, including the African Democratic Party. So we welcome. I think, just listening to the two speakers, Mr. Sikhala and Mr. Zindove here, it's very clear that there's polarization of some sort, and anything that is done by the other party wants to shoot down. But I would like to say, as Zimbabweans, let's find a middle ground where we do things properly, where we are transparent, where we are accountable, and where we show some bit of integrity. Even if people say politicians have no integrity, we can actually be politicians with a difference. There's nothing to hide. It's actually a good thing. Just as a Zimbabwean national, to say, you know what, because I'm MDC, but I've got a farm. If you are lying to the youths, could be creating 2.2 million jobs, it's good to come out in the open and say, you know what, a government does not create employment. I hope you know that. Employment is created by creating the right environment for businesses to prosper and to flourish. So that environment is what we need to work on as Zimbabweans, and we need to take away a lot of things that have been going on, the fear, the intimidation, the lying, and the smoke and mirrors. We need to actually get to the ground and start working. Thank you very much.
Thank you. You people who have asked questions. The first thing that I want to deny vehemently here is that since my re-engagement with Tsvangirai, I thoroughly asked him on quite a number of issues. And I want to re-emphasize it's a lie. That is it's a big lie that is being sold here that Tsvangirai is any farm. You are saying Tsvangirai is a farm in Kwekwe, but the Herald produced it when they were saying that he was renting a farm in Kwekwe, where he was trying to feed his cattle there. So we don't know now if the Herald will tell us that Tsvangirai is renting a farm from someone in Kwekwe, and you are telling us that that farm which he was accused of being renting is his, then we don't know who the honest person is between you and the Herald. So it leaves us with a lot of questions. I noticed on the notes which Zindove was writing here, when he wanted to respond to my question, he said, no, Tsvangirai is a farm in Mazowe. Can I read your notes there? I saw them. That's the problem with you, Joseph. I saw them. If you are lying to me, you are just 15 meters apart. Can I see your notes there? This is shameful. Someone who is not professional leadership. Can I read your notes here? What on? You can't read.
Okay.
This is maybe. This is not Mazowe.
It's maybe once a farm. I saw it as Mazowe. So there is no one with the fact that Tsvangirai owns a farm. So it's all a lie.
And I talked to him, he told me that he doesn't own any farm, and he tried to own, because specifically you people, we know ZANU-PF has never allowed any opposition political activist to engage in anything fruitful, whether business or in farming. We know what they did to ZAPU. Their history is recorded from 1980, when they had to confiscate and take all ZAPU properties. So don't think anyone in MDC today will be treated differently from the way how ZAPU's properties were confiscated from ZANU-PF.
Okay.
By ZANU-PF. Then there is another one that I want to clarify, Madam. You gave these people a lot of chance. And don't invite me to your meetings again tomorrow. You have more time than us. So because we want to clarify some of the false allegations here. There is a question that was raised by Mr. Mhlanga there about corruption. Mr. Mhlanga said corruption is manifested both in ZANU-PF and MDC. Yes. I would have loved to hear one corrupt act from an MDC activist. But what I can voice check for is the authored behavior, the corrupt behavior of ZANU-PF since 1980. We all know since ZIM Code was passed in 1983 as one of the economic policies in this country. Already people like Shoko were acquiring Chevron Hotel, people like Mnangagwa and Snabash were already acquiring farms all over. We know the Willowgate scandal of 1989, the authors and the ancestors of corruption is ZANU-PF. We know a lot of corrupt activities that ZANU-PF, when Gertrude claimed that she has 99.8% of disability during the war victims compensation fund, we know the ancestors of corruption. And if you want to hunt for the ancestry of corruption, please visit the ZANU-PF headquarters. That's where it has been authored, that's where it has been created, where it was raised, and that's where it is being practiced. Not in MDC. I've never seen one single MDC person who was alleged of being corrupt. You can talk about Tungwiza. There's Tungwiza. Councillors who became corrupt were fired by the MDC and they all defected to ZANU-PF. Because they knew where their ancestors are. So they went to their ancestors to ZANU-PF and they were openly protected them. But as we know, the MDC fired all of them. The 26 councillors were fired by MDC and they ran for the protection from the ancestors of corruption. And my last answer concerns the issue which this man from the Youth Council is trying to say a lie here. That the money were in the banks and so forth, and everybody could apply with the sellable project proposal. We saw all the names of the people who were beneficiaries of that Youth Economic Empowerment Fund. It was yourself, your girlfriends, Kasukwera's girlfriends and concubines, and all the top ZANU-PF's girlfriends were the ones that benefited from that fund. The list were produced by Kasukwera in our newspapers. I looked for any single MDC youths who benefited from it. I never found one. We found your girlfriends, the girlfriends of Kasukwera, the three of them who I know were there.
Thank you very much. We end on such a high note. This has been a very interesting debate. On behalf of Media Center, I would like to thank our panel tonight, Mr. Sikhala, Ms. Chikasha, and Mr. Zindove. Thank you very much for those very insightful presentations. And to all of you, thank you very much for attending and supporting us as Media Center. Have a good evening. Till we meet again next time.